All right, the British, they limited the migration of the Jews into Palestine, and we all know what happened in World War II. You had the end of the war in Europe, the discovery of the Holocaust, and at that point, the world kind of got a glimpse of what extreme oppression really looked like. So the oppression that was happening of the Jewish population, really in many parts of the world, all of that, it didn't stop, but it put a lot of things into perspective for a lot of people. Um, After World War II and the discovery of the Holocaust, world support for a Jewish homeland was never going to be higher. After World War One, they didn't have enough support. After World War II, it's going to be really difficult for anybody to come out and say we do not support creating Israel. So at that point, it's pretty clear that it's going to happen. The Jewish population is going to get together, pick some leadership, and create what's was called the Jewish Agency. The Jewish Agency really is just going to be that group of leaders that are going to speak on behalf of the Jewish population living in Palestine. The very first thing they're going to ask for an end to the restriction, and there's really nobody that's going to be able to say no to that. So at that point, the doors open wide open. On the other side of things, the Palestinian population obviously realizes that this is a big concern for them. So the countries around them, Egypt, Syria, Lebanon, it was called Transjordan at that point, Iraq, Saudi Arabia, Yemen, they all get together and create their own version of the Jewish agency known as the Arab League. Same exact thing, group of leaders, their job was to speak on behalf of the Palestinian population with regards to this new creation of Israel. So we get to 1947. In 1945, the world got together and created a group known as the UN, or the United Nations. 1947, the British decide, you know what, we have been doing this since World War One. We've been in the middle of this. We've been trying to play the referee. We've been trying to kind of do the best we can, be the nice guy, and every time they make a decision, somebody's mad. So in 1947, they kind of wash their hands of it and they say, all right, we're tired of being the punching bag. We're going to turn it over to the United Nations and let them deal with it. The UN looks at the situation and decide, okay, we're going to take Palestine and we'll just make it into two countries. One will be Palestinian, one will be Jewish, um, which is easier said than done. They decided that Jerusalem would be an international city. That's kind of interesting because Jerusalem is actually a city that is extremely important, as we all know, to Christianity, but it is also an extremely important city for Jews, and it's an extremely important city for Muslims. They decided it's not going to be in Palestine, it's not going to be in Israel, it'll be an international city, kind of like Washington, D.C. It's not in Maryland, it's not in Virginia, it's just kind of its own thing. Jerusalem would be the same kind of thing. So the question becomes, how do you split Palestine up and give each side part of it and make it so that everybody's going to be happy with what they get? This is essentially what the UN was recommending. Okay, they're going to draw a line down kind of through the middle, north and south, and everything to the west that was going to be Israel. Everything to the east that was going to be Palestine. Jerusalem was going to be this international place, right, kind of in the middle of the two of them. So the problem here is that if you are Israel, you get everything to the west, you get the coastline, you get all of the ports, you get a majority of the resources, you get a lot of the established cities. If you're Palestine, you get a whole bunch of deserts. and not much else. So they split it up. Was it exactly fair? I think an argument can be made for for the Palestinians that yeah they didn't get the better end of this. You could have got divided it north and south. They decided to go in an east west split here. So ultimately, if you're the Jews, are you going to be okay with this? Are you going to accept it? Well, heck yeah. What did you have before? Nothing. Now what do you get? Well, more than half the land would have been Jewish. Most of the coast would have been Jewish. Most of your resources were going to be Jewish. The ports, basically everything that's going to make you money, was going to be Israel. If you are the Palestinians, what are you going to be okay with it? First of all, you're losing all of that stuff, and most of the land that you're going to get is going to be desert and mountains. Not a whole lot of money to be made off of that. So the Arab League gets together and they decide we cannot stand for this. They threaten that if this is made official, they will go to war. The United Nations looks at the situation, decides, you know what, they're just bluffing. Um, we're going to go ahead and approve the plan and create Israel. So if you're the Arab League, you've got a choice here. You can either back down, but if you back down, it's kind of like the boy who cried wolf. Nobody's ever going to believe you again. If you don't respond to this in some way, um, nobody's going to respect your opinion ever again. Or you can attack. Not everybody in the Arab League was on board with that. There were a few countries that did not think taking on basically the rest of the world was a wise decision. Ultimately, the Arab League decides we have said we're going to attack, we have to do it. So they attack immediately, with the hope being that it would be sort of like a fight out in the hallway. Yeah, you'll get a few punches in, but for the most part, you're going to get a few swings, and then everybody else is going to come in and break it up. They're hoping that, hey, let's get a few punches in before they're really ready, and then hopefully we can just kind of renegotiate. They were absolutely wrong. The Jewish population, with the assistance of, again, just about the rest of the world, they're going to all gang up on the Palestinians. And it's not going to go well. It's a very short amount of time. They're going to take over three-fourths of what was Palestine. And very, very quickly, it's going to be obvious that the Palestinians and the Arab League are going to lose this. Because of that, two countries in the Arab League decided that they were going to step out early. Egypt and Jordan both said, "Hey, we don't want to prolong this. We're not continuing to fight." As a result of that, they get rewarded. Is a great way to put it. So for Jordan, for example, they're going to get an established boundary between them and Israel. They're going to get a little bit of coastline here, get them out to the Red Sea. For Egypt, the Sinai Peninsula, they're going to get to keep that, as opposed to Israel invading and taking it over, because they had already done that. So Egypt gets this, Jordan gets this. Ultimately, they get rewarded, while the rest of the Arab League is left to try and fight it on their own. That's exactly why Egypt and Jordan are two countries in the Middle East that, or in this part of the world, that are not very well liked by most of the rest of the Middle Eastern countries. Um, so that's essentially how we get to have Israel, how we get to what we consider the modern Middle East. If you want to look back at it, why does a lot of the Middle East distrust or mistrust the Western countries like the United States, like the British, like Western Europe? It's because they feel like every time they have a deal in place, they get cheated. Um, and if you look at the history, that's kind of how things have gone. All right, so that's going to end this portion of this. We'll have five more questions for you on Canvas, and then we'll call it a day.